On this episode of Teatt at Work, I'm joined with the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, the Honorable Stuart Johnson. Minister Johnson, thank you for joining us today.
Rebecca, thank you. Of course, it's always a pleasure being with DCOM.
As Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, what is your overall vision for your ministry?
If we take a look at Irma that passed 2017 and Maria respectively, we are still in that post-hurricane era in terms of the devastation that took place on St. Martin. We cannot forget where we have come from as an island, the resilience of our people, and the need to push forward. It leads me to say that as a ministry, the Ministry of Teatt, Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, that we have to push extra. The extra effort that is required for our economy to be put back on track, the extra effort in diversifying and promoting a healthy tourism product, the need to regulate our transportation system, and of course, ultimately, the need to have stable and reliable connectivity both via telephone and of course with our internet stability on the island. Those are some of the paramount important things that are dependent of the ministry going forward. What the ministry sees, of course, as priority is the overall restoration of our airport, the further expansion of our harbor facilities, which would include the expansion of Pier 2, which would require additional berths, the marketing of the destination, the overall product development of the island, where we've had, of course, the discussions and the decision I had to take, for instance, in reference to the Simpson Bay market area. That is part of the overall tourism product that we continue to have a healthy, well-balanced tourism product, diversified as St. Martin continues to be put back on track.
You recently attended the Destination Marketing Strategy meeting. What are some of the ideas that came out of that meeting moving forward?
You know, like I was elated to have been able to provide the tourist office with that idea. The idea stemmed, of course, from the need to have our tourism stakeholders actively involved in the decision making as well as the discussion process in getting our island properly marketed. We looked at, for instance, the branding. Do we still consider the current branding? We have St. Martin with the double A and other lettering that is congruent to St. Martin having, of course, its name misspelled from around the world. That was the primary reason behind it. So we see, for instance, amazing, magical, spelled a little bit differently, and that was more of a strategic move to do so years ago. The discussion, of course, stemmed on, are we going to continue with that? As you know, the reality is St. Martin still is under budget constraints. So the majority, if not all of the participants, agree that under these financially constrained times, that we would continue marketing the destination using that branding. As St. Martin continues to evolve, we would of course look at new ideas, new opportunities to get St. Martin back on track, including the branding of the destination. Many stakeholders, of course, allowed themselves the opportunity to be heard. Some of the concerns that they had, of course, they had my person as the minister there to, of course, have that discussion, find some commonality, and of course, a way forward. The end of the marketing strategy meeting was an overwhelming response. I think everyone sent high praises, all the hotel owners, all the hotel managers. We tried to get as many decision makers in the room as possible. Many persons, entrepreneurs were there, the Chamber of Commerce was there, Winnie was there, as you know, the national carrier. We had several stakeholders, and that allowed us to have a healthy, well-balanced conversation. The tourist office provided statistics in regards to what does the numbers look like in terms of movement of passengers through the island, what does it look like in terms of whether they come for leisure, for business. So we had some real statistics that the discussion stemmed off of first. So again, I think it's the type of discussions we had to have. Of course, I'm sure DCOM saw in our press briefing that we had recently where I spoke to the marine sector as well. That's a very strong sector in St. Martin that we have to continue to ensure that we have not only the vision of government tied into their future plans, but it is that cohesion where the industry and government find some commonalities, where there's public-private partnerships, and where there's a need to ensure that St. Martin, when we go abroad, is marketed collectively. So there's no need to have, for instance, the Marine Association going away on a conference, the ministers at the same conference, and there is no cohesion. So that discussion was, of course, a very healthy one. It was one where we have come to the understanding and agreement that we should market together, that we should also be able to do things collectively, and that, of course, it is under one banner, St. Martin, as we continue to be back stronger than ever.
Minister, piggybacking off of what you just talked about with the marketing strategic meeting, what are some of the marketing plans for St. Martin?
St. Martin, over the last few years, Releka, has had several PR marketing firms abroad. When I look at the overall vision that St. Martin has now, this current government coalition, we've repositioned that thought in terms of St. Martin maximizing on its PR marketing efforts. So I've pulled back some of the marketing firms abroad in some of the markets, the North American market, the South American market in particular, as well as the European market. All of those have now been changed, or in the process of being changed. The reason for that is, of course, St. Martin, in collaboration with the French side, has an MOU. That understanding, that agreement is to jointly market the destination together. So that is part of the overall workings of the two sides coming together in terms of a marketing aspect. So we maximize on the exposure. What that has done, of course, is in conversation with airlines, with cruise executives, they tell me that is a plus. That has something that should have been done 5, 10 years ago, because it shows St. Martin as one unit. It maximizes on the complements of the two sides. St. Martin on the Dutch side is more the hustle, the bustle, the activities of the day, and then on the French side is more laid back, more cuisine based. So it complements each other. There's absolutely no competition between the two sides. So it's strictly a smart strategic move. In addition to that, we have already in the European market and several markets put several marketing initiatives. For instance, recently was the Zomer Carnival, where we branded the entire truck. Part of the branding was, of course, to put key dates for next year, which is the music festival that we, of course, endorse heavily, St. Martin Carnival, the regatta. And the reason for that is, in my conversations with the tourist office, it's good to have pictures, it's good to have imagery of St. Martin, but you have to have a call for action. What are we going to do once the person sees this image of St. Martin? So now they've tagged it to events, and of course, being someone who's actively involved in social media and the like, I was part of those day-to-day workings because I want to see a particular vision based on the governing program be realized. So we've done that. We've also, of course, had discussions in North America, in particular with our marketing firms, in terms of how fast we can redeploy efforts in getting the island back up if there's an eventual press that we don't see positive for the island. How quick can we respond? How quick can we reach out to airlines, including the connectivity with airlines in reference to coming to the island, the additional flights. St. Martin shouldn't see that from, for instance, an Associated Press or a foreign media. That, of course, should come from St. Martin first. So we've controlled that, we've mitigated that, we've supported those efforts. And of course, every market is seeing a repositioning of our marketing firms. We have, of course, a limited budget. I have to continue to stress that. As much as my desire, of course, as a Minister of Teatt, is to have an increase in the Teatt budget, fact remains is we are still in extraordinary times after the hurricanes, and we are maximizing, we have prioritized and surely gotten enough exposure out of that. What I've, of course, made some unpopular decisions about, and being very honest, is in terms of canceling sponsorship for certain events. If it does not fall in the realm of marketing the destination, bringing persons to St. Martin, then it will not have my blessings. Several initiatives have happened on St. Martin, sporting events and otherwise, where it has gone on for years. Even the motivation and the advices is, yeah, but because we've done it for a number of years, but that doesn't mean we can't change course. It's not effective. It's not bringing 10, 20, 30 people to the island. It's just a local event. Then it doesn't fall under the realm of Teatt. Then it falls, for instance, maybe under sports or VSI. It's more healthy living, healthy lifestyle. So those decisions have been taken, and it's, of course, to maximize on what we can do within the ministry, double down on our efforts, and make sure that the ministry continues to generate the necessary economic value that we need for it to get this country back up and running.
With regards to social media, you recently opened up your Facebook page for questions, suggestions, or crucial concerns of the public. What have been some of the concerns that have actually caught your attention?
Social media, Releka, is one of the main things now transforming the entire world. And it's very important that persons understand the real essence of social media. Facebook, for instance, is a social networking site. So you're allowed to share, comment, like, do whatever you need to do in terms of a professional but friendly and courteous environment. What Facebook has now become of late, for some it's a silo, an echo chamber where persons are just bouncing off of each other and not really focusing in a constructive manner. What I did, for instance, on my fan page that I have, and I created that 2-3 years ago, was to allow persons the opportunity and to start a conversation in terms of tourism. What does tourism mean for St. Martin? every individual. The essence of this program, again, stems on what does the Ministry of Teatt do for every single individual? How does it affect personally? It's not about the minister, it's not about the organization, it's about what happens on a day-to-day basis through the ministry to further stimulate economic growth, further promote the destination as a tourism destination, to further promote, of course, the need for a healthy transportation system, and of course, the need for a sound telecommunication environment that we all can continue to have, for instance, the possibilities of e-commerce, the possibilities to connect with friends, and the same tie into social media, that we can actually get on social media to interact. So for instance, the opening of the question of what does tourism mean for me or for St. Martin in general, allowed persons the opportunity to see firsthand what it affects. Some of the things, of course, that grabbed my attention was that some people realize that it goes from one ministry to the other. And that's something that, of course, as minister in charge of Teatt, that I can only reach out to my colleagues about and find that cohesion and find that collaborative interministerial conversation to say, well, you know, for instance, the lighting of the boardwalk. I wholeheartedly agree. It affects our tourism product. It affects our residents. For instance, the paving of roads and the paving, of course, of sidewalks. That, of course, affects our product as a tourism destination. But of course, it also transcends through another ministry. So it allowed the conversation and the discussion for people to realize that social media, the role of government, and their opinion can all find one commonality. So there are things that was presented in there, for instance, the idea of having a platform to allow, for instance, entrepreneurs the opportunity to be trained and come up with ideas, as well as to hear from them directly some of their concerns to stimulate their economic opportunities that they can have. You know, there's several opportunities on St. Martin as we rebound. There's the need, of course, to have more young persons involved, not only in the decision-making process, but I want to see more persons involved in the business side of St. Martin, that they be able to start their own business, that their business flourishes, and that we have that continued cohesion, for instance, with the Chamber of Commerce. Just the other day, for the second or third time, I sat down with the Chamber of Commerce because there is that close connection and that close cohesion with the Ministry of Teatt, and in particular with me as Minister of Teatt. And the reason for that, of course, is everyone realizes through public-private partnerships and otherwise that we're only stronger together. And that has been the cornerstone of the message that I have always emanated becoming minister, that many decisions I've taken has put my own personal feelings aside, if not 99%, 98% of those. Even coming into the ministry, for instance, if we look at the composition of boards and nominees of boards throughout the ministry, we've seen where persons have been put there solely because of their professional abilities to move this country forward. You know, coming in as minister, and it's dovetailing onto our earlier conversation and question, many persons said, for instance, well, minister, you're very young, we don't know if you'll be able to handle the job, and so there was a lot of skepticism. What has happened now, and we're a year and a couple months later, is the opportunity to see that on every branch of government, legislative and now the executive branch, young professionals have the opportunity to serve. And that is, of course, the message in going forward, where we as an island need to have that conversation. How can we put our differences aside, get this island up and running, and after that conversation, after that work has gone in, then we can see if we want to take another path or another direction. So that was the discussion on how tourism affects St. Martin. That is why Facebook and other platforms in a healthy environment is very conducive to have that conversation for.
Minister, with regards to the airport and moving forward and being able to have all of these carriers and having USP clearance, what have been some of the issues faced since Irma, and now moving forward, what are some of the things needed to actually build back, bounce back, and get back to where we need to be?
You know, the biggest elephant in the room is always the funding. You know, people have to see that there is the opportunity for funding, and pre-clearance in the discussions that we've had, and one or two persons that have given their reservation about it, continue to signal that there is no funding. St. Martin has always had the leading role in its overall development, its overall opportunities for capital investment. If we see that USP clearance is a priority, which is the priority of this governing coalition, and it's outlined in the governing program, there is funding for that. There's several opportunities for capital funding where the airport can seek and ensure that it is there. The conversation, of course, has always been, what would pre-clearance do? There is studies indicating that with pre-clearance, St. Martin's economy will bounce back 2-3 times faster than without it. The traffic, the passenger traffic, the throughput through the airport would double, triple the amount that we have, of course, now, even after a status quo restoration. After any storm, there is a silver lining, and that silver lining is to build back better and stronger than before. So with pre-clearance, with the discussion of additional airlines, with the discussion of additional cruise ships coming to St. Martin, we have to continue to evolve as a tourism destination. And part of that evolution, of course, is our people. Goes back to the previous question. What does tourism mean for you as an individual? And we had recently the Aquila training program. What did that training program do? Is allow all frontline workers in the tourism industry, the first 440, the opportunity to be properly trained. So while Aquila training program is an internationally recognized program, what we added was a local component. What is our local narration? So a very prominent local educator who has a consultancy was part of that overall training where they provided the local narration. Who are we as a people? What do we want to sell as a tourism destination? Are we all saying the same things? And are we, of course, cordial, friendly, and showing that warm hospitality? We have at times, because we continue to be the melting pot of the Caribbean, have allowed the influx of our brothers and sisters, not only in the region, around the world, to kind of mask or hide our friendliness. They have to adapt to where they come to, not where they come from, and we change to that. So it has, of course, been part of the overall visions of the ministry, the discussions, and the need, even through this program, to ensure that the people of St. Martin realize how fragile we are and making sure that everyone forms part of that solution.
Minister, you recently mentioned that you had about a year and change in office. Since your 1-year mark in office, what has been some of the ministry's greatest accomplishments?
Some of the accomplishments, and there have been many, besides supporting several events and ensuring that there is that overall promotion of the events ahead of time to maximize on the economic value, is, for instance, one, the air transport agreement that was signed in the Dominican Republic, the air transport agreement that was signed in Brazil. What those particular air transport agreements does, it allows, for instance, for interline code sharing. It allows for agreements between airlines and the opportunity for those airlines now to service St. Martin directly. Let's take, for instance, the latter, the Brazilian air transport agreement. We used to have the chartered scheduled service of Gull Airlines. It was not sustainable. It no longer serves St. Martin. What that air transport agreement does now is we can have regularly scheduled commercial flights coming to St. Martin now from Brazil. That is what we intend to do, which is now look at not having a scheduled charter service, but regular flights out of Brazil. That will, of course, allow for us to maximize on our PR efforts that we're doing in the South American market. We have identified Brazil as one of the top regions and where we're going to focus our marketing dollars at, because we see Brazilians have fallen in love with St. Martin over the years. Of course, they love not only the tropical pristineness of St. Martin as a Caribbean destination, but the activities at night in terms of the gaming, the adult entertainment, the regular entertainment. Throughout St. Martin, there is a buzz. No other Caribbean island has that. And we as St. Martin people must always invoke that type of pride, that sense of nationhood, where we as St. Martin are second to none. People around the world see that. While we grumble and complain with each other, the outside world is proud of St. Martin, of where we have come as a destination. The other accomplishments, of course, includes now having those stakeholders part of that decision. We're now in an opportunity where several persons have felt left out. Like I mentioned before, the marine sector, they never felt included, they never felt part of the discussions in terms of government. So that has been another accomplishment where we've seen now persons are feeling a closer bond with government, with the ministry in particular. Several others include the cleaning up, for instance, administratively. There have been an exorbitant amount of bills, legal bills, that was cleaned up from 2014, 15, 16, 17, that this ministry under my leadership cleaned up wholeheartedly, worked overtime to ensure that those things were cleaned up. Several entities that fall under me as minister, for instance, BIP, there was 3 or 4 pages of 20 different items that stem back from 2013, 14, and is down to a list about 5 or 6, and we are working on it to be down to 0 by the end of this year. So while we don't on a day-to-day basis, and I'm moving away from all the other coverage that we've had, because the Ministry of Teatt have had a lot of coverage, and I don't want to double up on some of the things I've said before. It has been a lot of cleaning up. A lot of things have come to the ministry, inherited over a period of time, and that did require a lot of work. My cabinet has worked several nights till 7, 8, 9 in the night or later, and when I go home, they're still getting calls, and I get that constant feedback from them. But when Minister Johnson, let me get a night rest, because persons are calling constantly. And that shows that people are now hearing a voice. They're hearing now a connection where things are actually happening, where there's a follow-up in government, and where there's a closer connection. So those are some of the accomplishments. I can list a whole program of accomplishments about it. But again, the program is within a time constraint as well. So I'll just wrap up with that one for now.
Minister, recently the Ministry of Teatt hopped on board for COPE Avon 2020. So what are some of the other initiatives taken to enhance the revitalization of Phillipsburg?
Phillipsburg in its totality has to have discussions not only with the Ministry of Teatt, but with ROMI and Justice. There must be, of course, the infrastructural improvements needed in Phillipsburg, the lighting, the signage, the overall road network that is there, front and back street, has to be fixed as well. Justice has to provide that safety and security. We've seen where safety and security is of paramount importance for not only our visitors, but our residents alike. When we have COPE Avon, and I've already signaled that alarm for next year, while we can have the discussion on the name change, I need to see a maximizing on its potential. A few weeks into office, 2018, when I came in, the advice to sign for COPE Avon was there. So of course you get a lot of inherited things, and in principle, when I saw the beslissment, when I saw the agreements of why we should have a COPE Avon, I agreed. I agreed with the event. I went to the event, of course, and I don't see the partnership with certain stakeholders involved. I don't see all the stores opening. So this year coming, I've signaled the alarm where we have to have that conversation where a COPE Avon, which is a shopping evening, must have stores open. It must be discounted prices. It must transcend not only to a center part of the celebration, it must be throughout. And just recently, Curacao also had a COPE Avon. I was on Curacao for a working visit at the same time, so we were able to see that exposure as what a COPE Avon there looks like as well. There was the hustle and bustle in and out of shops, so there was that buzz. So if others can do it right, I think we can also join and maximize on that potential that COPE Avon has. The discussion of a name change is also there, so it identifies closer with our people, our Caribbean heritage, and that is, of course, a discussion that would come in the next few months for sure.
Minister, shifting a little bit from the ministry now and taking it a little personal, prior to taking your oath of office, you were actually the school manager of the Martin Luther King School. Since in office, have you been able to visit, go back, talk to any of the students and give them a little bit of encouragement on what you do and moving forward, to encourage them to be, possibly following your footsteps or any of the like?
After this job, because there is nothing that is permanent in life. Life is at times so temporary and fragile that anything can change in an instant. I have repeatedly said, even on day one of taking office, I have no issue going back to the school in which I was school manager of. Reason for that is, of course, every day I walk with a vision, with the opportunity to say that now I want other young people to serve in this role. That is the only conviction that I have. The opportunity now to shatter that glass ceiling that has been talked about several times, barriers broken, that no matter who you are, what you have done in life, that you can serve in the highest office of this country in a noble and humble manner. That is the opportunity I want every young St. Martiner to have and aspire for, whether it's in the legislative branch or in the executive branch of which I'm a part of. Yes, I visited the school several times. I have a close connection with all of the teachers, actually all the teachers in St. Martin in particular. I have several friends that are teachers. We have that close connection. We have the day-to-day conversation of what is happening in the education sector. I know many persons would have wanted me to be there as minister, but indeed this role, I think coming from an educational background where the budget is 0 to none, has allowed me to streamline certain priorities in this particular ministry, realize and have them realize that not everything is as cut and dry as it has to be in this particular ministry. So I've spoken to several youngsters, several of my former students even on the road, and they've continued to congratulate me. They reach out to me even on a day-to-day basis through Facebook. And of course, they're looking for that support to know that indeed there is someone looking out for them, proud of their accomplishments in and out of the classroom. And it continues to be for me a day-to-day passion that education is still deep within me.
Minister, where would you like to see St. Martin in the next 10 years?
St. Martin, as a country, has to continue to evolve. In the next 10 years, I expect to see additional hotels open, name brand hotels, additional airlift coming to St. Martin, additional cruise offerings, for instance, like Virgin Voyages, which will offer a particular niche market where you have millennials coming with a high disposable income to, of course, stimulate economic opportunities on our island. I would like to see specified excursions on St. Martin, focusing to a range of tourists, not only, for instance, those that come on a budget or the volume of tourists, but we have to cater now to special needs, special diversification of our tourism product. Of course, additional attractions. As a destination, we have to provide additional attractions on St. Martin. I've had the discussion with, for instance, Carnival Cruise Line when they were here not too long ago to tell them at the Emilia Wilson Park, for instance, at the Rainforest Adventures, I expected to see a water feature. We are in the Caribbean. It should, of course, preserve its cultural and historical value, and the opportunity for tourists to be in the steepest zip line in the world and experience that, and our residents alike. But it must have a water feature. We are in the tropics. It's hot. It's, of course, something that residents can enjoy throughout the year and stimulate. So they were very receptive to that. What I would also like to see, of course, is the overall restoration of some key points. The salt mills that are in Sucker Garden, the restoration of Fort Amsterdam, the expansion of the boardwalk, which would then allow passengers to come from the cruise terminal straight into Phillipsburg. U.S. pre-clearance at our airport, that within the next 3 years maximum, that U.S. pre-clearance, the bilateral agreement is signed, and that St. Martin is again one step ahead. In addition to that, I want to see every school on St. Martin fully equipped with every educational opportunity possible. Latest in technology, tablets for our students, the opportunity for e-learning, and the opportunity for St. Martin to now propel itself into the 21st century and beyond. The opportunity for other youngsters to serve in every facet of this country, and that no longer persons on St. Martin feel excluded in the process of government and the inclusion of being on St. Martin. Many persons feel at times that they're not in the know of St. Martin, not in the involvement, not a part of. That feeling must be removed in the next 10 years. St. Martin is for St. Martiners, and my definition of St. Martin, of course, is anyone who has St. Martin deeply rooted in their heart and sees St. Martin as their number one and only home. So for the next 10 years, I look for the future with much hope and optimism, and see St. Martin to be stronger and better than ever before.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Teatt at Work. Minister Johnson, I'm looking forward to having you on the next episode of Teatt at Work.
It surely was a pleasure, Leica, and of course the need to inform the public is something that I will continuously do, and I look forward to your cooperation as DCOM, and I'll be here anytime you need.
Thank you, Minister.